on cloud. Okay, here we are. Kim, are you
Yep.
still on? Okay, good.
I am.
Yes, I can see you. Okay, great. Where do these people come in from? I can't even remember.
It'll be up at the top of your screen, I think.
Oh, it will.
I think so. You should get like little pings as people try and enter.
I should, right?
Mhm.
This work. Nobody is coming over. Anything, Olivia?
What?
Not even Olivia.
What about Olivia?
She's not even on yet.
Oh, I think Olivia's at evening practice.
Hmm. Hmm. Mine says it's waiting for it. Oh, Olivia. Yes, Olivia. Can I hide Olivia? It's good because now it uses. Can you see all the people who have joined so far? You can.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't, but
I put them on the side and like the view is
there we
yeah.
go.
Maybe I'll keep this here.
Oh, 7 now. Hold on. No, I don't. We're just letting some folks in right now. Andrea, you're muted. We're just waiting for more folks to join. I'm gonna mute.
Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. We're just going to wait for a few more folks to get their Zooms all straightened out.
Hmm.
Hey, folks, we're just gonna start in a minute or two. We're just giving folks another minute or so to navigate Eventbrite and Zoom. We'll kick things off in a minute or two. Well, I think we've given folks enough time. Welcome to Demystifying the Summer Internship Performance Review Process. Thank you for joining us this evening. We've timed this webinar so that it can be timely and beneficial as most of you head into the back half of your summer internships in investment banking and more broadly across the financial services industry. My name is Kim Oxenberg. And just to sort of set the room, we're anticipating that this will last around 30 and maybe at most 45 minutes. And if you have any questions that come up as we work through the presentation, please enter them into the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Tonight, I'm joined by Meredith Dennis and Andrea Benson from Prospect Rock Partners. Meredith and Andrea are going to give us an overview of the midsummer performance review process. And to get a little bit more granular, we're going to dig into the timeline and the process, and then we're going to look at how you can decode some of the feedback that you might receive, because sometimes you're going to have to read between the lines. And then we're going to touch on how to navigate the back half of the summer. You know, there's still time to course correct if need be, and set yourself up to finish strong. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at some likely scenarios that you might need to navigate as you exit the summer. Those might be an offer, no offer, and then the big question mark, what a hold might mean. And with that, I am going to have Meredith introduce herself, and then we'll have Andrea introduce herself and kick things off. Meredith?
Great. So my name is Meredith Dennis, and I am the founder of Prospect Rock Partners. I'm also the managing partner. Prior to Prospect Rock, I spent 15 years working in investment banking. Post MBA, I started Bear Stearns and M&A. I worked at Bamel and Levin and Swim Coverage, and I ran structured debt for Sumitomo. I left in 2013. I co-founded a digital platform, a tech company that I ran for a couple of years, and I have done executive search for the past 7 years, where I focus on investment banking, private equity, and corporate development. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrea.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes. Great. Andrea Benson here. I joined Prospect Rock Partners almost 7 months ago now. I spent 15 years on Wall Street, worked at Bamel for 13 and a half years, and then my remaining 2.5 years were at Morgan Stanley. At BAML, I worked in M&A, campus recruiting, and global technology. And then at Morgan Stanley, I was the global head of campus recruiting. So we're excited tonight to decode some of what you'll experience in the latter half of the program. Thanks for joining.
So Andrea, do you want to kick it off?
Sure.
Great.
I'm trying to figure out my buttons here. Happening. Here we go. Oh, there we go. Okay. So midsummer reviews are here. I want to peel back the onion a little bit and demystify what they actually mean. So essentially midpoint or midsummer is just that, and it's an opportunity for both you as interns and your managers to better understand how you're tracking towards the ultimate goal of a full-time return offer come end of program. Okay. Here is a calendar slide, and you're probably wondering, what is this showing us? So the calendar is a snapshot of the remainder of your program for most of you. So it's the latter half of the 10 weeks, so weeks 5 through 10, with the majority of programs across Wall Street ending on Friday, August 9th. This gives us an idea of how much time you have to really check the box on important parts of your process, and essentially how much time you have to prepare to create your self-evaluation and speak to others on your performance. So we'll walk through these steps here that are outlined on the side of the slide. So firstly, and most importantly, you need to figure out what the process is aligned to your unique internship experience. So if you weren't provided an overview during training, ask your campus recruiter, ask your manager what the timeline looks like and what you should be prepared to speak to. The midsummer usually takes place exactly at that week 5. You have the July 4th holiday in there. So that sucks some of the time out of your preparation. So always give yourselves a little bit extra to get yourself ready. For most programs, the interns are asked to submit reviewer names, and these names usually have to be pre-approved by the manager and HR and then are submitted by the intern. At that point, you've been at the desk for about 5 weeks, but the first week is usually a wash from training. And then you have the Juneteenth holiday in there. You have the 4th of July, as I mentioned, eating up a bunch of your time. So really drill down into what you worked on and who you interacted with to ensure you have strong reviewer names. Once the names are approved and submitted, either an HR system or HR themselves will contact your reviewers and ask for feedback as it aligns to the competencies that equate to success for the role in the firm. Reviewers are usually given a time frame to submit their feedback. It's then captured, reviewed, collated, and summarized by managers in HR, then to be delivered in your review. The review will be popped on your calendar. It won't take more than 30 minutes. HR might be there, which is totally normal, so don't be freaked out. But in preparation for your review, make sure you have a notebook, pen, have the list of the reviewers that are providing the feedback, the projects you've worked on, and 3 areas you feel you've excelled, and similarly, 3 areas where you think you could use some growth. If there are things, projects, people that you want to focus on or get exposure to, now's the time to voice this to your manager and to HR. At the end of the review, confirm how the end of the summer program review will work, if it's going to be the same, et cetera. Write all of this down. And don't be, worried if the midsummer review is a bit vague. They sometimes are. So ask specifically if you're tracking for an offer, and we'll talk more about that later in the presentation. Okay. Okay, so self eval. I mean, many of you are starting your careers. You've probably never done this before. So, where do I start from? I mean, it's totally hard to evaluate yourself unless you really understand what good means where you are, right? So, okay, so how do you define good at your firm? Well, ask your managers, ask HR. Not many interns know that they can indeed ask, what does success look like here? And what am I being evaluated against for an offer? So high level, what should be included in your self-eval? You're probably thinking, I'm only an intern. How thorough do I need to be? Well, best practice is to always keep it to direct, salient points. You'll need to confirm the metrics that equate to success on your desk, group, and firm. So outline your strengths and your weaknesses, all the different things that you've worked on thus far, and how you intend to maintain those strengths and work on those weaknesses throughout the remaining 5 to 6 weeks of the program. But it's important to call out that not all internship programs require a self-evaluation for interns, but just my 2 cents, I'd suggest you do it anyway and share it with your manager. It'll give you a leg up amongst your peers. It'll be a good place for you to start evaluating yourself, the good, bad, and the ugly as you start your career in the working world. Before we hit the next slide, none of us are perfect. We can definitely vouch for that here. And so you're continuously looking to better yourself throughout the stages of your career. So don't harp on any of the weaknesses that you have, and we'll talk more about that in the next slide. Okay. So what are competencies? You probably hear about that, and not only as an intern, but as a full-time employee. And so this is a really great question. And if you're able to familiarize yourself with these, you're going to be in a really good place. Competencies and success within the competency verticals really equates to being good or success on the job, right? So, okay, so this means that I'm good. And yes, that's right. So on the slide here, we've outlined common competencies that you might see, whether at the firm you're at or later on down the road, used in financial services that link to the expected outputs of an analyst or an associate. And I'll quickly read through these, business acumen, teamwork, leadership, judgment, communications, professional presence, risk awareness, integrity, and technical understanding. So how would an intern utilize these competencies in their self-evaluation? So within each competency area, bullet out a strength or an area of focus as part of a rough draft. Then next to each bullet that you put under a strength and a weakness, figure out how you plan to maintain a focus on these areas throughout the remainder of your program. I also want to footnote, you have to be realistic, right? Because you have 4 to 5 weeks left, there's events and whatnot. The last week is somewhat of a wash. So be realistic about what's possible, and include those points in your self-evaluation. So, examples of weaknesses, I always have a hard time with those myself. And those are harder, think about. So here are some examples of things I've seen throughout my career. So, um, needing a better understanding of what the bigger picture is, needing to understand how my work helps the team achieve our goals, more attention to detail. I can't emphasize that one enough in finance. Communication with my team, letting them know what I have going on so I could time manage my deliverables. Asking my teammates how I can strengthen my work and my team cohesiveness, and not rushing against the clock, better time management. Some of those may resonate with you on the phone. They definitely do with me. So those are some common, not pitfalls, but areas that I've seen summary analysts and associates really need to focus on during the internship. All right, I love this slide. So you may have heard about performance tracks or tiers, and you're probably thinking like, what's this about? So I love this slide. Most interns will never see this. This is really an HR slide that I'm sharing with you behind the scenes. But this is really a realistic look at the bell curve for both intern and full-time analysts and associates within financial services. So what do the 3 buckets mean? They're pretty much self-explanatory here, but I'll dive in a bit deeper here. So each category, 3, 2, 1, 3 being exceeds, 2 being meets, 1 being does not meet. So how many interns fall into each category? Well, it really depends on the class composition at the time, but rule of thumb is 10% exceeds, 80% meets, and 10% does not meet. Interns will live in this bucket after the mid-summer review until the final review is collated and submitted. And then within each category, interns are stacked ranked. So you'll have, within the exceeds category, you might have 5 folks and they'll be stack ranked, strongest to weakest 1 through 5, et cetera, et cetera. So does exceed mean offer? Most of the time it does. I mean, unless an intern bombs in the second half of the program, they usually get an offer. I've seen things go south at social events, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But usually if you're performing in that top bucket at midsummer, you more than likely are a shoo-in for an offer. Where it gets a little hairier is the meets bucket, because as I said, 80% of the class is usually lives in there. Most will get offers, but some will fall into the hold category, which we'll talk about in a bit as well. And those falling into does not meets, you guys have work to do. At the midsummer, you're probably tracking towards a true no offer, but I have seen folks climb out of the does not meets into the hold category. But I've rarely seen them climb into a true offer throughout my, I don't know, I've hired 12,000 plus interns and I run 10 summer programs. So I've seen this all, and that rarely is the case. Um, so as you can see here, we'll just translate at the bottom of the slide here, exceeds is one of the best we've seen, top of class. Meets is strong in most areas, some development needed. And then does not meet is significant development needed, most likely not a fit for the firm. Okay, and if you can hear my son, I'm sorry, he's babbling back there. All right, so reading between the lines in your review. So you might be asking, okay, I'll have my review, or I have my review. I really don't know where I stand. If the review is verbal, which most of them are, how can I prepare myself? And this is a great question, and it really boils down to one word, and that is listen. There are key messages weaved into reviews that will help you understand where you truly stand within those three buckets that we just discussed. If your manager doesn't give you a true rating, a 3-2-1, and exceeds meets, does not meet, and don't be surprised because most won't do that. Listen for some of these keywords on the screen to help you identify how you were viewed and with your performance within the group. We see some keywords and phrases listed here, but let's call out a few that I've lived through during my time in campus recruiting. I'm sorry, 1 second, please. Thank you. So it's worth calling out, no one expects you to be performing at the level of full-time analyst or associate as an intern. And honestly, no one expects you to understand everything that's going on your desk since you just started a few weeks ago. So this really means that it really boils down to a lot of the soft skills, how you interact with people, how you're communicating, etc. This will give your manager a preview of how they expect you to perform and interact with the group should you come back full time after the internship program. When it comes to an intern trending well, I always look for attributes such as can-do attitude, asks questions, communicates clearly, adds value, anything that adds value, right? On the negative front, bad attitude, doesn't learn from mistakes, hard to track down, can't find them anywhere, non-responsive, etc. What's not on here and is always top of mind is events and networking events and social interactions. How you interact with others, how you handle your alcohol at events. This will all be enveloped into your review in some way, shape, or form come end of program. So baseline, remember that the 10 weeks itself is truly an elongated job interview. Okay. So I have my review. What do I do now, right? My motto, one of my previous managers was you just keep going, right? Make sure you take notes during your review. Sometimes the heat of the moment, not only in my review, but important meetings, I get that momentary blackout where you kind of forget what happened, right? So it's really important to have those notes. You can look back and see what was said and how you felt in your reaction to the feedback. Digest it all, the good, bad, and the ugly, acknowledge it, and then attack it head on. It's important to note that the program, again, is 10 weeks long, meaning you're going to go through a very similar thing come the end of the program. The end of the program is going to be more in-depth because you've been on the desk longer, and your reviewers and managers will have more meat to review you on. So what do I recommend the interns focus on for the remainder of the program? Make sure you're focusing and connecting with your campus recruiter. Most firms on the street mandate, at least 2 office hour sessions. I would grab that, maybe make it 4. Talk through the feedback you've received, talk through your digested thoughts, Continue to strengthen your relationships with the reviewers from the midpoint. This is really important. I would really not try to branch out and try to tap other reviewers for the final half of the program. It's just not a good idea to envelope more folks in the mix because you want to focus on who you have and what you have and allow these reviewers to evaluate how you reacted to the feedback and how you utilized it to move towards an offer come end of summer. They'll be able to provide meatier feedback given the elongated period of assessment. Got it. So we're focusing on the remainder of the program, but I'm still not sure how I'm doing. You might have caught a few phrases. I think I'm in the middle. Maybe I'm not. What do I do? Think back to the phrases we reviewed. Look back at your note. If you feel uneasy, I honestly would go with your gut. I would recommend thinking about reaching back out to key recruiting contacts to potentially put feelers out there to see which firms, if any, may have some full-time top-up hiring needs.
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers. The answers. You ain't got the. Been doing this more than you.
Okay. Well, that was interesting. Did everyone see that?
I don't know. I
That's
saw
a little
it.
crazy.
I removed it. That was a little
Good.
crazy. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
He's
So I
not
think
getting an
I've
offer.
removed it. He's not
He's not getting an offer.
No.
Okay. Okay, so all right, so what are top-up hiring needs? It's essentially the needs of a firm after the conversion of their interns. You know, some firms might not have a strong class, therefore won't convert all of them, leaving gaps that will need to be filled by top-up hiring. And by doing that, they could head back to campus or re-engage with people that they lost or missed out on or didn't interact with during the recruiting process itself. And we'll talk a bit about that coming up. So interns hear a lot about headcount across groups. People get worried. What can what can I share about conversion rates and headcount ratios? I mean, this is a great point. And yes, it's a topic that all firms within the financial services industries focus on and plan against well in advance of the program itself. You know, unveiling, behind the curtain, there's an in-depth analysis that goes on for full-time hiring needs, trends, market conditions, pipeline activity, and growth expectations. All of these combined play into a firm's needs. Sometimes, however, things change and mid-program firm strategies shifts, or even right before a program starts. And so, what do we do? I mean, most firms will never renege on the commitment to new hires to start at the firm. And this is because the majority of firms across Wall Street depend on this junior pipeline to breathe life into the organization. The future of the firm, essentially, headcount strategy can be viewed as a triangle, right? So the higher ranks you go, the fewer people you have. So the junior talent is looked at as breathing life back into the firm. And so the majority of bulge brackets utilize this practice via internship programs. And Meredith will talk a little bit about lateral moves coming up, but this is why in many cases it's difficult to do so. All right, let's see. Can I share a time where a firm's needs have shifted totally? I mean, summer 2020 COVID, that was, inevitable, completely virtual, the large resignation. In that case, we gave every single intern an offer. So that was one extreme. And then another extreme I experienced was when we had a shift in leadership, historically offered 85%. It was mandated mid-program to be 65%. And so that was a very serious and, painful exercise, but that is just another scenario that you have to be ready for, hence the presentation in our context today.
Mhm.
All right, we'll talk a bit about hold, no offer, hold. I mean, I think these are, pretty explanatory on the screen here, but obviously offer is the ideal outcome. Things to keep an eye out for if you get the offer: same office, same group, any sign-on sweetener, any money towards relo, and most importantly, when does it expire? Year over year, the banks get a little bit more stringent on the time they give offers. Most are 48 hours. Can you request an extension per school rules? I've lived this. You can. but I don't recommend it. At most, you might get a week or two from the group expecting your acceptance. School rules nowadays don't protect you that much. By requesting an extension, you're also sending a signal that you may not want to return. And that's not really a great way to potentially start off with a new team. No offer, obviously not where you want to end up after working tirelessly to get into the program. Now you're left with facing re-recruitment for full-time. It's stressful, but this happens. No offers are not only allocated to low performers, but in some cases are totally unrelated to performance, as I mentioned in a previous summary I've lived through, and are solely based on headcount and strategic needs of the firm. And things change in this industry overnight, and then, offers to interns are given with extensive care and deliberated on up until the night before offer extension itself. So I just want you to know that that the firms take this very seriously and, want to put you in the best position as possible. The firms spend a lot of money to find you, to train you, to bring you on board. They want to keep you. They made the investment. So obviously it's an important decision. Then lastly, what is a hold? A hold is that exactly. It's a good and it's a bad. It really just means you're on hold for a full-time spot. And this isn't the worst news, but it is something you should be ready for and understand. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so we have a couple scenarios here. I'll run through these quickly. And then we're going to have Meredith come on to talk about how we could partner and career progression and advice, et cetera. So quickly here, decoding strong feedback. As I mentioned, directly following your review, look back at your notes, wait a full 24 hours before putting pen to paper to derive a plan on how you're going to maintain your strength and focus on your weaknesses. As you grow in your professional career, a lot of what you is said, things that are said in reviews, please know that you have to read between the lines. And what do I mean by that? It means at times you'll have a manager who's very direct, and that's great if you can handle that, right? But most times you won't. So don't be surprised. This is normal. Emotional intelligence, reading the room, energy, listening for those keywords we talked about. These will all help you decode the feedback in your reviews. Utilize your network, your junior and senior mentors, your buddies, your classmates. Bounce ideas off or feedback that you received off of them to get an unbiased opinion for someone who's knowledgeable of the office environment and the work that you're working on within the group and the firm. And I think lastly, you got to learn to take the feedback. And this is a hard one, and I don't expect everyone to take feedback under their wing, graciously during the internship program. But always remember that it's not personal, it's professional, and it will be something that you'll have to continue to accept and grow with as you move on in your professional career. All right, so mobility. The thing you love to hate. I mean, I think originally mobility, maybe 8 years ago, when the Wall Street firms launched the idea, and its intention was good. I think it's morphed over the years and it's changed into something that I'm not too sure about. So I'll give you my 2 cents. In the recruiting process, mobility at these larger firms is touted as an option. But getting down to brass tacks, right? This program is really for interns that did not get into the group that they wanted to, or the office location that they wanted to work in during the process. And this is really attributable to the banks that run a placement process and don't have like direct placement, meaning like a BAML or et cetera, who bring you in as a generalist and then you do the matching dating day and then you're placed in a group, right? So during the program, interns are told they can opt into mobility if they're performing well, an interview with another group while they're there, on the firm's grounds, and then come end of program, should they still be performing well, they can receive 2 offers, which is awesome, right? But then one will have to be released within 24 hours. Most firms say this won't be held against you, but it gets really hairy. Many interns who've tried to get into banking and instead were hired into wealth management or finance, they'll try to mobilize back into banking after being passed up the first time around. And this is just an example of where things can go sideways. Um, You also have the interns who want to move groups to work with their friends or move into a group that's more popular. Perhaps they rated one that was their number one choice of the placement day, but did not land there. Also in turn, managers are supposed to keep an unbiased view of this whole process, but they get a little ticked off and offended, right? Because they want you to be bought into the group. They've recruited you, they put the time and energy in, they like you, they want you to come back. But I've seen them slate individuals for mobility into the hold or no offer category, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? Um, in a summer where offers are very competitive, from my experience, it's just an easy ding, right? We're in debrief conversations and it's, oh, Andrea, raised her hand for mobility to move into M&A. Well, then she doesn't want to be here, right? If she's like on the cusp of a hold or an offer, to me, now she's a hold. A couple of things to call out: mobility, moving off offices is harder. Just my 2 cents. If you recruited for New York City and didn't get it the first time around and instead landed in Chicago, stay there for a while. If you ended up in capital markets, DCM, debt advisory, or rates and currencies, which could be viewed as not as attractive, and you want to move back into banking, probably not doable. And then these groups, these smaller groups that are not as, sexy or as favorable, they do get offended. They only hire 2 to 3 interns. They want you to stay as well. So just think about all that before you raise your hand for mobility. Oh, but you got your offer, but you really wanted to work at a top 3 firm. You're working at an RBC and you want to work at Goldman Sachs. I mean, my advice to you, just being that I've lived this for an eon now and I've seen um, classes come and go, would be to take the offer that you have versus trying to move upstream. It might be harder to hear, but if you recruited for a firm and you didn't get the offer the first time, you're more than likely not going to get it the second time. They keep track of people that they've talked to, and if you didn't get an offer, you're not going to get another one. It won't hurt. It will wait some of your time to re-engage and temperature check with another firm to see if they have top-up hiring needs. But be careful. People talk. As large as financial services industry is, it's actually, pretty small. You don't want to burn your bridges. And again, things get around. So you didn't get an offer, what do you do? The dreaded no offer. Don't feel embarrassed. I would say, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It stinks, right? You've spent hours and so much energy to get your foot in the door, and then you weren't able to essentially, close the deal. But I'll say this, you can only control how you react. And this happened for whatever reason. Again, it may not have been performance related. So take the time to digest the news. It'll be hard seeing your classmates celebrating their wins. It is hard. But then hit the ground running, and we'll talk about how you can engage with us here at Prospect Rock Partners. You can connect back in with key contacts and mentors, etc. Update your resume with your internship experience, but at the end of the day, you just need to get back out there. And our last scenario here is, what does it mean to be, put on hold? So a hold is a no. It's a soft landing is what I would say. And my 2 cents from my experience, again, eons in the space, most times interns never move off the hold list. The hold list is stack ranked in order from strongest to weakest. And if there were an office and an opening or a group, there's no guarantee you'd even migrate up for an offer. But what you can do with the hold is you can shop it around, right? So you can give yourself a hold. You can help craft your story, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you're able to take that hold in your pocket and hit the ground running, right? You're not a no, you're a maybe, and no one on the outside really knows where you are on the maybe list, right? So my advice to you would be just to contact your HR contact every 2 weeks to check in on the probability of moving to an offer. And if they're saying most likely not, it's probably most likely not. Ask if any other offices or groups are an option at the firm, or if the hold is the standard hold across the entirety of all group. and just leverage it for all it's worth. Meredith, do you want to talk a bit about how we might partner?
Sure. So the first thing I want to talk a little bit about is what the definition of lateral recruiting really means. So lateral recruiting, the definition of lateral recruiting is people who have been in investment banking postgraduate for at least 1 year. It does not mean you have a summer internship and then you are now in the industry and you are going to laterally recruit from bank A to bank B. So typically recruiters and people who work in executive search are compensated the bank to find a plug and play person who has been in the industry a minimum of 1 year. So what does that mean for somebody who completed their summer internship? I don't know any kind of search firms or executive search firms that work with kind of recent grads, placing them, or folks who where the summer internship either went well or didn't go well, where they place them. That's really done through campus recruiting more than anything else. So we at Prospect Rock can work with you in one of two ways. So we really wear two hats. So the first I spoke about is lateral recruiting, and we're compensated by bulge bracket, elite boutique, specialty, middle market, global banks to find people for plug and play. From bank A to bank B, from Moelis to Evercore, Evercore to Lazard, Lazard to Rothschild. And that's really an analyst too, all the way up through group head. But not everybody really falls into that bucket. So this is where we can also help. And so sometimes the narrative isn't quite as smooth. And so folks who didn't get a return offer from their summer analyst or summer internship, it doesn't really matter. It's summer analyst, summer associate, and they need help crafting that narrative. What is the reason you didn't get the summer internship? And what did you learn from that? How are you going to reposition yourself in the market? What's the strategy to do that? What is realistically the banks that I should be targeting? Where should I be spending my effort and energy? How do I network in? How do I move beyond the career center? I need a little bit more hand holding. This isn't going quite as planned. Because it's very scary when you don't get that return offer. You, as Andrea said, you have friends running around, woohoo, I have an offer. It's also for folks who do want to pivot internally, or maybe this isn't your dream bank. It is there are ways to up tier. You have to be very careful how to do it. I think the most important thing is you always have to secure, first and foremost, secure the offer. Don't decide this is not for me and blow your offer. Whether you take it or not, it's always better to a bird in hand. Always try and get the offer. So this, we can help navigate trying to up tier or move banks or move to different groups. Maybe you worked in debt capital markets and you want to go into M&A. Better have the offer from RBC and DCM, and then try and re-recruit into another smaller firm possibly. And that's more strategic information that we can help with. And I would say lastly, I think you have the offer, and you're feeling good, but maybe you want to just need a little bit more hand holding about, is this the right choice for me long term to go into investment banking? I really thought I wanted to be in private equity. What is my career track? If I do this for 2 years, how long do I have to stay? And just a little bit more information on the market and what's realistic. So, just to put that and into summary, if you've been at a bank more than a year, that's more on the recruiting side where we're compensated by the investment banks. And then if you need a little bit more hand holding, strategic advice, that's more on the consulting side where that's a fee-based service that we work with folks on a one-off basis to help them strategize, regroup, and reapproach the market the best that we can given our experience.
Awesome. Thank
Kim, I think we have some questions.
we have we have a number of questions, so thanks for that. I'm going to start at the top. Andrea, I think you mentioned that for certain banks there are like set percentages in terms of how many what percentage of interns get offers. Is that 85% that you mentioned, is that pretty standard, or does each bank have its own? And maybe one or both of you can talk to like what the current market environment is like and where those sorry, there's a car accident outside my window.
Oh gosh.
And what the market is sort of telling you about where those percentages might be going in this summer of 2024.
Sure. I'll let Meredith talk about current market conditions, but yes, the percentages are unique to each firm. I will say probably 15 years ago, many of the firms overhired more than they actually needed, hence a lower conversion rate. Firms over the past, call it 8-9 years, have really moved to the offer is yours to lose, meaning they have enough seats for the interns that they have. And so they want to retain and convert top talent.
I would say a lot of that is really also dependent on market conditions. And so currently I spoke to, and this is where wearing the recruiting hat is kind of helpful. Unfortunately, we hit a little bit of a bump with interest rates, and the uncertainty of an interest rate decrease is impacting the M&A market. And so there's a little bit of hiccup in M&A right now. And so there are firms that are very busy and sectors that are very busy and have very, very strong pipeline. And then there are firms that are not busy. And so what I'm hearing right now is that yield levels are going to be lower because of the market. And so even if you are a super strong candidate, there will be groups that will not be allocated the opportunity to extend offers. There will be offices and certain geos that will not be given the opportunity to extend offers. And so I think last year was pretty light in terms of offers, and I unfortunately expect offers to not be as robust as originally thought even in May. So
it sounds like in addition to reading between the tea leaves in your review, you should also be sort of reading the tea leaves in terms of like, are people busy and burning the midnight oil with transactions, or do things seem pretty light? And you could sort of gauge the level of offers based on that too.
And if you don't get an offer, one of the things, and don't take it too hard. Sometimes it's market conditions. Sometimes, out of the 75%, don't get offers or something like that. You can that's more of a narrative that you can craft depending, and that's stuff that we can help with. It is a tricky market. It is a tricky market, and there is ways to come back and combat that, but it is a tricky market right now. So I don't know percentages. I think it's really market dependent and also firm dependent.
Right. And now, Andrea, does every bank have this self-evaluation process? And it seems like maybe some of the boutiques have a less formal summer. And if you did have a this formal review process, would you have been notified that at the beginning of your summer? So some folks in the chat are concerned that they might not have been notified that it was coming down the pike.
Great question. Yes. I mean, it really will vary by firm and by team. Some of the larger bulge bracket firms have a very expensive process, such as we discussed today, but then there are some boutiques that don't. So I can imagine if you haven't heard anything yet and you've been on the desk at least 6 weeks by now, we're past the midpoint and you're rolling towards the end of summer. But I would reach out to your campus recruiter, your HR contact, even the COO of the group, just to confirm that that's what the process is. But in all likelihood, they may not have something as big and granular as this. And then the self-evaluation, not all firms have that. Even the bulge brackets, not all of them have that. But that's just my personal recommendation to you, to have that and to create that while you're on the job. Give it to your manager regardless, just so you have it out there.
It's good. And I think it's also important, if you want some feedback, you are allowed to ask and be like, hey, can I get some feedback on how I'm doing? Is there anything that I can work on, anything that I can improve, anything I can do better? It shows that you're coachable, you're trainable, and that you're willing to work hard to improve. And I think that's really important.
I think that would be a really a sign of maturity, that you're interested and willing to take in that kind of feedback and thinking about the people that are receiving your work, rather than just the other way around, what the bank can do for you. So just even asking the question is probably viewed as a positive sign from your potential full-time employers. And then one thing that I thought of, and we've talked a little bit about what happens with the no offer, but does no offer mean no banking?
So no offer does not mean no banking. No offer means so if you started out and this is where the narrative comes in and the strategy comes in. So if you do not receive an offer from bank A, it's really hard to up tier if you don't receive an offer. That's the first thing. It's also really hard to stay at the bank at the same level. There has to be a reason, a justification for no offer. You have to delve, there has to be some self-awareness. And there has to be kind of realistic expectations for where you could potentially go. So no offer doesn't necessarily mean no banking, but I do think it means a reevaluation of where you could potentially be a cultural fit. And so if you don't get a bulge bracket offer, I think it's highly unlikely for you to go to another bulge bracket. I think it's hardly unlikely that you are going to go to an elite boutique without an offer, because it's a mark. Could you go to a middle market? Maybe. Could you go to a smaller boutique? Maybe. But even so, you're going to have to prove your technicals, prove come in with references from the summer. So do not blow up, burn any bridges. If you think it's going in a bad direction, there's also kind of things that you could do to soften your landing.
Is there a way to, if you get no offer, leave on a positive note?
Yes, there is absolutely a way to leave on a positive note. I think being gracious and thankful for the opportunity you've been given, understanding that this wasn't a great fit, but you learned a tremendous amount and you realize you still need to develop and grow, and maybe, this is not the right firm, but hopefully there's a lot of things you can do to leave on a positive note. And most importantly, you can thank people for their time, thank for the opportunity. And if you leave, and it's hard, but if you're gracious upon exit, you would be surprised how many people would come back and support you.
That's
You
awesome.
agree,
We have
Andrea?
Totally.
You're muted.
I-
Yeah.
I echo everything that you just said.
We have a couple
Yeah.
questions from folks who are rising juniors and have offers already for their internships next summer. The first is there something that they should be doing now to prepare for next summer? And the other is there a way to navigate into a preferred group for next summer, or is that something that's completely out of your hands?
I'll take the navigation of group first. I mean, network. You just have to network, utilize people that you know, school contacts, school teams. Usually in advance of like a placement day for the larger firms, they'll send you a placement book. And it's really an opportunity for you to take a look at each group, and each group tries to sell itself with like deals and key contacts and, fun things that they've done. So take a look at that book and start reaching out in advance. And really try to just get your name out there, and that will pay you back dividends come the placement process. And what was the other half? I don't.
What to do to prepare. So you've got, almost a year and change to get ready for your banking internship. Is there something you should be doing now?
I think we will be offering a series of webinars.
Yeah,
you should listen to some of our webinars and read some of the articles that we put out. We do offer a lot of content that I think is very useful. Whether it is, how to act at a networking event, how to act, there's a lot of very useful content on Prospect Rock.
And then another one is when considering whether to give an intern an offer, do banks consider their transcript and GPA, or is it just the performance that they've displayed while at their internship?
great question. The transcript and GPA is to get the internship offer itself. None of that will be brought on for discussion during offer post summer offers. So don't worry about that. Just get your foot in the door, and then once you're there, it's just solely performance related.
I do want to loop back one. I want to say, if you're going to prepare for interviews, there's so much emphasis placed on technicals and modeling. And the problem with placing so much emphasis on technicals and modeling is it's like the third or fourth round. So understanding the process, understanding where technicals and modeling fit into the process is extremely important, because if you don't have a really strong narrative, you're not going to make it past the first. You're not even going to make it past higher view. You're not going to make it past the first round, the second round, the third round. And also a lot of it, that I've seen out there is it's such an emphasis on modeling without an emphasis on understanding financial accounting. And, I think somebody who is an undergrad liberal arts major is going to have a tough time competing head to head against, undergrad business school major. So, it's going to be different questions for different people. So I think they're going to expect the undergrad liberal arts person to be a lot more polished. The story has to be tighter. and they're not going to be as worried on the technicals. Whereas if you went to Ross or you went to Wharton or you went to, McDonough, your technicals are going to have to be even more sharp.
Great advice. Resonates even, I don't know, I don't want to say how many years ago.
But we took a little bit longer than we thought we would. But we hope this has been helpful for everyone. We will be releasing this deck as well as the webinar. And if you have any questions, please feel free and follow up. And we will be hosting another webinar shortly on how to break into investment banking, how to get a summer internship and so on. So please stay tuned and make sure you follow Prospect Rock Partners and on our website.
Hey
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thanks so much, Kim. And thank you all for coming this evening.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.